we don't know what's going on in the board
This
meetings
is not
around the
Jump
show.
on JJ.
But I really do have a sense that Book of Boba Fett and this season of Mandalorian were made a little bit messy because of meddling of executive decisions that were foisted upon them. And I just want to say, leave Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni alone. Let them do their work.
Much. Speaking of my birthday, real quick, because he's a frequent listener of our podcast, shout out to my older brother, Robin, for the birthday present to me that I am currently wearing.
Ooh.
My Welcome to Otisburg hoodie.
Otisburg.
I love it. It is so awesome. So thanks, Robin.
Otisburg.
He already knows, but yeah, I love it. It's just a little bitty place.
Otisburg. Okay.
Yeah. God bless whoever thought of making that T-shirt, because that was we used to quote that movie all the time.
All the time. You want to see a long arm, Otis? You want to see a very long arm? Yeah, this is treasured, and I know we have lots to talk about today, and actually more stuff keeps popping up. I suggest we do a quick run through multiple trailers that have all kind of popped up recently before we get talking about Mando, which of course I really do want to talk about, because this has been a great season. I mean, Picard has this like weight to it because it's a culmination of all that Trek. Mando this is just season 3. It just happens to be rocking, and I'm really enjoying it. So we should talk about it.
All right.
But also with this, one other little thing about James Gunn, because I'm sure that you also get little updates whenever he says stuff on Twitter. But people constantly are like, oh man, you're going to screw up Superman. Oh, dude. And someone else went at him they asked, do you think audiences are experiencing superhero movie fatigue? And he said exactly what we say. I mean, it's the same thing. It's not like he reinvented the wheel here, but he said, look, it's not about the genre. It's not about that. It's about the storytelling. He goes, the only things that people are getting tired of is the same story done over and over again. He goes, it's about character and story. They love the characters. And if you treat them well and you do them justice, no one would have superheroes. It's this more cynical, by the book, by the numbers superhero movies are causing that fatigue. And I agree. I mean, it's not the genre. It's just about the stories being told.
Yep. Totally agree.
And even though he's not at Marvel anymore, I still think that's one of the things that Marvel gets right. They are willing, plus they have Disney behind them and they've got their own network. They're willing to say, like, this one is a sitcom. This one's a horror thing. It's all in the same universe where there are superheroes. You don't have to just keep telling a good guy smacking bad guy in the face story in the super.
Well, I do so love the smacky stories. Yeah,
I think you and I have kind of a good guy smacking bad guy in the face story. I think that's kind of what we have, and I'm not sure which one I am. I'm probably the bad guy. It's all right. I'm wearing black right now. So are you, though.
I am, yeah. Sun Records.
Stop Making Sense right behind you.
Yes, which totally unrelated news, but they're re-releasing it yet again later this year.
Well, it's got like recently a 4K restoration now, right? Like they've really bumped it up.
And apparently they've remixed it. Jerry Harrison and E.T. Thorngren have remixed it yet again. This VHS release was always my favorite version of the movie. We're getting way off topic here, folks. It's okay.
We're going to get back to trailers in just 1 second.
That movie changed my life. And
I know.
I know
how big that is for you.
Yeah. And speaking of your brother, probably most of the times I saw this movie at River Oaks Theater, he was there taking the tickets and introducing the film and sometimes coming out the dance at the end of the movie, too.
Robin's a ham, but also it's one of the best concert films ever made. And
it is.
It's an ideal as far as doing a midnight movie kind of thing where it does encourage that kind of like inclusive. I danced at Stop Making Sense at a midnight movie because it seems like you're there. Mm-hmm. And so I'd say one of the other ones is Sign of the Times. Prince is, and I'm not a huge Prince fan, but as a concert movie, that felt like you're there. And you're like, I want to get up. I want to move because I'm front row. And it's an awesome, awesome concert. I've
never seen that, but yeah, it was the same for me.
Sign of the Times is amazing.
I definitely need to check that out. But I saw it the first time I saw this was at River Oaks Theater, and that was with Nathan in the summer of 1985. And then later, it was around December that same year. That's when they started showing it every Friday and Saturday at midnight. River Oaks, which they did for a couple of years straight, starting that month, December 1985. That night, the opening night of the Friday Saturday night run of Stop Making Sense, was the first time I ever danced in public.
Oh,
Absolutely. And of course, this movie is the whole reason I'm a musician now. That's absolutely changed my life. Anyway, this is my favorite version of this movie because they put in 2 songs that were cut out of the theatrical version, which is Cities and Big Business Ezimbra medley in the middle.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was better with those 2 songs. As far as I can tell, they've put them back in the movie now with this new version that's coming out. Anyway, so enough about that.
I love them dearly, and that's great. Okay. Trailers. Trailers have been released. Many things. Secret Invasion has a longer trailer now for Marvel upcoming series. Blue Beetle just dropped. And what else? Why am I blanking? Barbie.
Spider-Verse.
The Barbie trailer just dropped. And it's great. No, seriously, it looks great. And yes, Across the Spider-Verse. Oh, goodness gracious me. So many trailers about projects I'm actually very excited for. So out of that bunch, what do you want to talk about first? Spider-Verse, probably?
Spider-Verse is the one where my jaw almost dropped watching it. I was like, God damn, this is gorgeous. I mean, the first film was
such a surprise.
Stunning.
But this one, surprise, too.
It looks like they're carrying on the same aesthetic, but it looks even better somehow than the first one.
Well, obviously, Spider-Verse, they were leaning into the multiverse real hard with the first one. And what I loved about the first one was not just the inclusion of, it's like, oh my God, we get the older Peter Parker guy, but we also have Miles versus Peter Parker who dies, and we have Peter Porker. I mean, and every one of them that shows up, Spider-Man Noir, all that, every character being represented graphically differently because they're all from different universes, and you're like, oh, that's great. It's sort of like the rules don't really apply when you're doing multiverse stuff. So this one is expanding it 18 million times. Mm-hmm. And you've got live action Spider-Mans walking around in the background with animated, and they're from every possible iteration. There's there's the 60s one where they didn't finish doing all the webs because to animate those was so the Bakshi cartoon Spider-Man. It just is insane. And then, I love it, yeah. And then it's just a continuation of Miles' story. I know that the Easter egg people like myself, the real diehard fans, are just like looking in background and going, oh my God, look at that. They have the Spider clone who I was talking about, Ben Reilly. Yeah. He's the one that looks like he's in a 90s comic book, but animated. So it looks like an illustration. There's a little bit of him in that trailer, and that's the Scarlet Spider, Ben Reilly. And I'm like, oh, they even made him look like he did in the 90s comic. So all of this, and we get a great Peter Parker back. Now he's got his daughter, Mayday, with him, May Parker. I'm like, oh my God. I'm just a nerd because she grows up to be Spider-Girl. They have Spider-Woman in this one, only it's an alternate reality Spider-Woman. So she's Jessica Drew, but she's the African-American. I mean, classic Spider-Woman in Marvel is white. So this is an alternate take on her. Mm-hmm. But still, she's pregnant because Spider-Woman got pregnant in the comics and had her child. But the idea of like pregnant Spider-Woman swinging around and Gwen's back, no, it's a feast. My only problem is not that it's a problem. I'm like, what's the plot?
Well, I was about to mention that it looks like we're getting a villain in the form of like an Uber Spider-Man guy who.
Well, he is Spider-Man.
He's trying to preserve. He's almost like the Kang of the Spider-Verse. Yeah. It looks like. Or the one who remains. Peter Parker who remains. Assuming it's Peter Parker, he may not be Peter Parker.
No, he's not. He's Miguel O'Hara.
Oh, okay.
And he's been around. That's a thing where, and he showed up in the button segment of the previous movie. Like after the credits, he's pointing at, and the whole, old Spider-Man thing where they're all pointing at each other. But the whole thing with him is, this is interesting. Now, he's a hero, but they're actually setting him up like he's the antagonist. So I'm like, wow. All right.
Well, the one thing I caught in the dialogue of the trailer is that they seem to be in disagreement over whether or not they should let Uncle Ben die. Who's Uncle Ben? I don't know who they're talking about, but he's like, you don't understand. If Ben doesn't die, then none of us ever exist. And Miles is like, well, fuck that. I'm saving him anyway. Of course, it's the Luke Skywalker sentiments. Like,
which in his case,
fates be damned.
Not even his Uncle Ben, because he didn't have an Uncle Ben. He's Miles Morales.
Right. Which makes it even
and neither did
more
Miguel O'Hara.
Thing.
But Miguel O'Hara from the future, because he's 2099's Spider-Man, that could be him saying, if Uncle Ben doesn't die for Peter Parker, I can't be Spider-Man in 2099 because there will be no Spider-Man. I could see that because Uncle Ben's death is kind of that crux point that makes Spider-Man, or at least one.
Clearly, that's one of the conflicts in the movie. Whether that's the main one or one of many things that they disagree on.
I'm just taking. This is a movie where I'm taking them on faith simply because they blew me away. I honestly think Into the Spider-Verse is in my top 5 superhero movies of all time because it was unabashed and it was so full of life. It goes past, it was an awesome Spider-Man movie. It had heart and humor and characterization, and it moved you. And the animation they just, again, blew it out of the water. And to think that that's Sony, I'm like, wow, what did you guys pay those dudes? Because that's better than, I liked Incredibles too, but I love Pixar, but I'm sitting there going, that's a superhero movie right there. And it is just, it adapted a lot of the 2D graphic styles, but in an animated way. Oh, I'm so excited. So even if I don't know what the plot is, I don't care. I'm down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very excited about that.
Now, have you seen the new Secret Invasion trailer?
Yeah, I've watched it a couple of times. The first time I watched it, I was like, okay. And I watched it again today. I was like, yeah, this looks really good.
It does. And it's, there are going to be nerdy comic book fans that are like, that's not Secret Invasion. Did you like my impression of those guys? That's not Secret Invasion.
Yeah.
Secret Invasion was a big Marvel crossover that was about the Skrulls having been hiding in plain sight within the superhero community. So it's very much involved with the superhero stuff. This looks like they've really grounded it to where it's Nick Fury and it's political espionage with an interstellar, alien twist, but it doesn't look like you're going to have, other than we see Rhodey in there, but it doesn't look like it's going to be Marvel hero team up. It's just him and Talons, who was the Skrull from Captain Marvel.
And what's her face?
What's her face? I like her a lot. Well, it has Olivia Colman in it, and it also has Emilia Clarke from Game of Thrones.
Right. Well, his right hand person.
Yes, Maria Hill.
Maria Hill.
Sorry, yes, Maria Hill. I think she remains the only one who, I don't know if she's part of SWORD or if she's just been folded into the CIA because S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't exist anymore. But I think she's still his sort of go-to for like insider stuff. She is the one he trusts now that Coulson's dead or out in space or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, I guess this is really, it looks like maybe the infiltration is more at an administrative government level than it is superhero level.
Yeah, but across the entire world,
they did that.
World leaders apparently are being replaced by Skrulls or have been.
Because if they turn this into an Endgame, multiverse or Kang,
Kang Dynasty thing.
Yeah, the Kang Dynasty. Yeah, if it was, they already got that going on, so they wouldn't.
I think this is everything is tied in, but I have a feeling that this won't be involved in that at all. This is just about Skrulls on Earth, and Fury being the one guy who can take him down. I like that we first see him with the eye patch, and then later, I guess he gets an eye replacement or whatever, so he's walking around a little bit more discreetly. I will say this about Nick Fury. An eye patch is something people notice. If you're trying to be kind of under the radar, maybe ditch the eye patch. But Emilia Clarke apparently plays Talos's daughter, who we did see in Captain Marvel.
Yes, okay.
So she is a Skrull, and she is Talos's daughter grown up. Olivia Colman, I think, is also a Skrull, but leader of evil Skrulls or something. Because I did like that about Captain Marvel, where they were, because traditionally in Marvel Comics, Skrulls are bad guys, Kree are good guys, and the Kree Skrull War has been going on for centuries. The movies have tried to make it more gray. It's like, hey, they're bad, lots of bad Kree, and they've done terrible things. Ronan the Accuser, of course, is a Kree, but they're like going, but not all the Skrulls are bad dudes. It's like it's a war, and they had Talos say, look, my hands are as bloody as anybody else's. I've done terrible things in this war, but I'm just trying to protect my people. So they've made it much more human or gray and much more less us versus them. So I think Talos remains a good Skrull, and I think that these are a different faction trying to take over Earth for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Probably because we have vibranium and adamantium.
And adamantium now, yeah.
Oh! But I'm very excited, and I know it will tie into Armor Wars, which is also with Rhodey. Dude, I'm just so excited. MCU still gets me going.
Do you think it sounds like they're at least part of the story is maybe leading us to believe that Fury is going to die at the end of this? Because he says,
sure, of course. Yeah.
One last fight he says in the trailer.
And I think that's not them saying, let's get rid of the character. I'm sure they would always love to have a Nick Fury around, but I think it is just about the age of the actor, and they don't want to replace him.
Yeah.
And Fury has this great arc, and he has seen S.H.I.E.L.D. destroyed. He's had to go on the run, all this stuff, but he has always been the guy. So I think one last go round, if this is the end of Samuel L's Nick Fury, that's okay. I mean, I wonder who picks up the pieces. But I don't know. Probably Maria Hill, if they decide to reform S.H.I.E.L.D. or something.
Or bring back Coulson again.
Or they could bring or they could bring over Ross, who is also in it, but he's not S.H.I.E.L.D. Obviously, he's CIA.
Yeah, we know that's coming.
Or FBI.
Harrison Ford taking over William Hurt's role.
Man.
Interesting.
Yep, and people getting mad because he doesn't have the mustache. I'm that way a little bit. I'm like, okay, so he's General Thunderbolt Ross. Why doesn't he have the mustache? Which does lead me to think they'll do the Red Hulk.
Yeah, there's been plenty of fan depictions of that already.
Oh my God. I'm picturing him in a really mocap suit, like Harrison Ford at 82 in a mocap suit going, Red Hulk smash.
It is interesting that they replaced William Hurt, I think was younger than Harrison when he died, and they've replaced him with an even older actor.
Well, I mean, obviously they're going for a name, and I'm sure they probably didn't even think I bet that was an offer. They're like going, he's not going to take it.
Let's ask him. You ask him.
We have to ask him, but he's not going to take it. And then he does, and they're like, oh shit. Oh. And then they're very happy, and they do a little dance in the office.
They're probably taking bets on it too.
What is it on Harrison taking it or not? Oh boy, that's more expensive than I could do. So I'm excited for Secret Invasion. Blue Beetle. What'd you think?
I had to look it up. I at first when I saw it, I was like, because it just looked like Iron Man and Spider-Man, basically in one movie. And so I had to look it up. I'm not familiar. I knew about Ted Kord a little bit. I didn't know much about Jamie.
He was very 80s.
Whatever, however you say his name. Jaime. So I was happy to see that was an actual real version from the comic. They didn't just make him up for the movie.
Oh, no. Yeah.
He's been around for a while.
He's our most current. So he's our newest, even though he has been around now for 15 years, maybe-ish, a long time. So and he's a great character. But you're not wrong. To tell you the truth, Ted Kord, I mean, the original Blue Beetle. Oh, here comes Professor Jones. Put on my little cap. Dunce cap. Dan Garrett was the original Golden Age Blue Beetle. And so eventually in the 50s, early 60s, that character had lasted a good long while, but basically Charlton Comics got the license. They went to Steve Ditko, who had left Marvel. He had created Spider-Man already and Doctor Strange and all that, and then he goes over to Charlton because he was really not into the Marvel thing after a while. And they're like, we want you to create a new version of Blue Beetle. And so he kind of stole a lot of his ideas, very Spider-Man ideas, though Ted Kord wasn't a teenager. But it was about taking a mystical hero who had like a mystical blue scarab that gave him strength, and then basically Ditko goes, yeah, none of that shit. Ted Kord is a genius scientist, inspired by the mystical hero. So they didn't write Dan Garrett out. He's inspired by him to become a new Blue Beetle who has a Beetle ship, and he's got this sonic gun and a bright light gun. I mean, he was like non-aggressive weaponry, and he quips and he swings because from the Beetle ship there's like a thing he can swing on. So he's just kind of an athletic guy, no powers, and he's kind of a lighthearted hero. That was in the 60s. And clearly Blue Beetle, Ditko, you look at the design, you're like going, you did just kind of take your Spider-Man and make him blue. God bless you. And so then DC in the 80s buys all the Charlton characters. Now they own them. So now they own Ditko's Blue Beetle. And they introduce him to the DC Universe. He's great. Then he gets paired up with Booster Gold in the Justice League. They become a comedy team. Everyone loves these characters. And then cynically, in the early 2000s, it was a good storyline, but it was grim. Along comes the OMAC thing. And anyway, Maxwell Lord shoots Ted Kord in the head, kills him. It was very grim. Everyone was very sad. I cried. And at the same time, around this time, DC's like, but we got to keep Blue Beetle around. That little amulet, the mystical amulet, was revealed to actually have been an alien artifact that fell in ancient Egypt. And that scarab that Dan Garrett, the original guy, had, finds its way to Jaime. Just a kid. And so this is very Spider-Man. He's just this kid in Texas. And
oh, cool.
And he's not a nerd like Peter Parker, but he's a skinny guy who's like just a normal guy. And then it attaches itself to him. And it turns out that Dan Garrett never accessed or was able to communicate with it because it actually has a sentience. Dan Garrett was able to use powers from it, but it really bonds to Jaime, and Jaime is like the host for it. So it does stuff like talk to him, allows him to translate any languages, and it can form stuff that he needs at any time. It's sort of like the Green Lantern ring, and it creates armor, which is all very bug-like. He's got the extra arms. He gets the beetle wings. It's very cool. And it is a very, just like with Miles Morales, it's very much a family story too, because his family knows his secret and they keep it and they encourage him. He's doing good. It's a loving family. They all fight, but it's great. And it's a good little town kind of story too. So I
did think that was interesting. They show that in the trailer that he has his origin moment right in front of his entire family.
Yes. Yeah, I go, he likes me.
Not something he has to hide from him.
And then it just hops on him, and I think it's his uncle going like, it's on your face! It's on your face! I think they're capturing the spirit really well. And this also, looking at that trailer, and James Gunn posted the trailer himself, was like, guys, check out this really awesome, wonderful superhero movie. I think that's totally genuine, not just him going, please, won't you go see a DC film? But I think he realized that, unlike, sadly, with Shazam 2, which they probably were like, oof, well, release it, we'll see how it does. I think with this one, they're like, it is connected enough, but not, that sure, we can fold it into what James Gunn's doing. Not a problem. We can keep him around.
Do you think, though, because I know that Ted Kord is famous for being a big, best buddies with Booster Gold. And I know that, but that's one of the main things he announced. We've got Booster Gold coming.
Yeah.
Do you think because I'm assuming in this story that Ted Kord is dead. Because we see her as his sister, Susan Sarandon playing his older sister.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm assuming she said that belongs to me, meaning I guess her brother has died.
Well, they also show the bug ship.
Oh, they do? Okay.
That's right. Yeah, in the trailer with his family in it.
Okay. That's
So
right.
I assume that I love that even if it's just in the background and Susan Sarandon, man, that's pretty awesome get. But I assume that they're acknowledging it's like, yeah, no, Cord was around. He
Yeah.
was Blue Beetle before, but this is a thing. And maybe I think what she's talking about that belongs to me. I I think Ted Cord had the scarab that Dan Garrett had, and he
Mhm.
just didn't use it because he's a science guy and he didn't feel like it chose him or something. But I think he kept it. So I
Mhm.
think the fact that it ends up with Jaime, however they're going to work it, she's basically saying, give me back that scarab, even though my brother didn't use it. So,
Right.
will Booster Gold, will they have him buddy with Jaime? I don't know. Or will it be a flashback? Or will they even bring in Blue Beetle at all? I don't know.
Right. I mean, that's my question. Is like it's clear with these movies that are coming out. We've got, we found out pretty quickly that Black Adam was not going to last,
Yeah.
and now Shazam looks like that franchise is dead. And
Just sleeping. Just sleeping, Chad.
well, I mean, they've got the room every time one of these movies comes out that was already planned and it bombs. It's like I'm sure
It's
James.
basically
I can
Gunn
imagine
goes,
James Gunn, okay, back
great.
to the drawing
Time
board.
for our Captain
Yeah,
Marvel movie.
right.
That's right. I said Captain Marvel. Boom.
So I'm imagining the possibility is hanging out there right now that this version of Blue Beetle, the Jaime Reyes, may be carried over into the new DCU.
If the movie's good, I'm all for it. And I
Yeah.
like that young actor a lot. I watched all of
He's
Cobra
great.
Kai.
Yeah. I love. Yeah. That show. I really love the first 2 or 3 seasons or so, but after that, it just started kind of going in circles. It's like, oh, now they hate each other again. Like, come
that
on.
was the structure. Yeah. At the same time, I was so surprised at how well it worked. How
Yeah.
well that show. I was like,
Yeah.
there's really no reason there should have ever been more than a season of Cobra Kai, much less that it existed. And I'm like, then that's really saying something. And I was like, it's all just teen soap opera with karate in it. And I'm like, I'm ready for that. And I'm happy. And every time they bring someone else back, I'm like, are you kidding me?
It done very well, I have to say.
Yeah.
I don't know the actor who played the one where they're revisiting the sequel.
Which one?
Well, I think it was the last one that
You mean Karate Kid 3 when they go and he goes back to
he
Japan?
goes to Japan. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. I don't know who that actor is who comes back and you think he's going to be a bad guy at first, but then he
Yeah.
turns out to be his best buddy. And
It was awesome.
That whole season was great, I thought.
And
Anyway.
also when they what was his name? Is his name Ken Barnes? Like karate's bad boy. That guy. And if you had watched those movies, you're like, are they ever gonna bring him back? And when they do, he's just running a furniture store. And it's another thing like we have to face off. He's like going, I'm actually pretty happy, dude. I no real reason to have a fight. Thanks.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. Anyway, Blue Beetle, anticipating. And again, you probably haven't watched it. Barbie does look good.
I didn't see.
I know, but it looks very funny. And Ryan
I had
Gosling
no idea.
as Ken. Well, it's written and directed by Greta Gerwig, who she gets it. And again, I'm starting to think that Margot Robbie can do anything. She's so perfect in this as well, and that's sort of the whole joke. And they're all acting very stylized because they are living doll people. At one point in the trailer, Ken goes, so I was thinking maybe I could stay over tonight, because we're boyfriend and girlfriend. And she just goes, to do what? And then he goes, I'm not really sure. It looks like it's going to be great. And Super Mario Brothers, that's probably one I'll have to wait on. Even though it does look good, people are forgiving Chris Pratt for not being it's a me, a Mario, not doing the voice, but whatever. So was that all for the trailers? I may have missed one. Okay,
I think so.
Let's talk about Mandalorian. It's good.
Yeah. I do have to say I am having to accept the fact that the show has changed quite a bit from its original thrust. The first 2 seasons, this has been talked about a lot in some of the videos I've been seeing people talking about the show. That the first 2 seasons had very clear directives. The first one, he's protecting the child, Second season, he is trying to get the child to a Jedi and protecting the child still, obviously. So there were very clear mission directives in the first 2 seasons. This one is so far been kind of a wait and see kind of thing. There's
Actually,
some stuff they took care of, but that's still the actual direction that the season is going is still unfolding right now.
I think it's pretty clear what the thrust, to use your naughty wordage,
whatever that means,
thrust of this season is clearly about the return of the Mandalorians. It's all about the unification of a very spread out, diasporous, disconnected people coming back together and finding anew the way. But I do respect that it is kind of, I think what's throwing people is that they feel confident enough to go off on these tangents and say, we also want you to see the wider world or universe. So returning, I really liked the episode, The Convert, that was about the clone doctor guy and his being, oh, thank God I'm no longer part of the Empire. I hated what they were making me do, but I'm also really bored now that I'm, reintegrated into the New Republic. And then the woman who was the badass, and now she's like going, you'll love it here. But secretly, she's doing something. And I do think they're setting up, obviously, Moff Gideon. Why wouldn't you want to bring back an actor that good? And possibly Thrawn.
Yeah, that has been highly speculated because we know that he was already mentioned when Ahsoka was on last season.
Yeah.
Because she's looking for him.
And I think the whole cloning thing is also tied in with that. That maybe his research, that particular, they're setting that up. Maybe they did the mind zap on him because they don't want him to recognize his own tech, that it's already been used. Maybe that's how we got Thrawn. Or is this even them trying to lay seeds to go, this is the Palpatine plot that we really don't want to deal with that happens in the sequels, but this is where that begins. We're going to have to kind of play with that.
Yeah, they've already been, they were hinting at that in the last season too, when there's that one of my favorite episodes actually, where they Grief Karga and Mando they go and infiltrate that base that's on Navarro, and they find this cloning lab that has stuff in it that looks kind of like prototype Snoke's a little bit, sort of.
Yeah,
it just seemed like they're already hinting in that, but I kind of my theory with that right now is that we know that there was talk, chatter amongst the New Republic agent,
they chatter
officers, that they didn't know what happened to Moff Gideon. There was rumors that he had gone disappearing on his way to trial, but they weren't really sure. Then, of course, we find out at the end of this last episode last week
that his prison
people watching this are ahead of us. We haven't seen this week's episode yet, which is coming out tonight. Coming out tonight. So
he was hijacked out of his prison transport,
and there's evidence
just
of Mandalorians
like what happened
there
with Trump today.
Yeah, there's evidence of Mandalorians having something to do with that, and we I think it's in the first or second episode. Bo-Katan, maybe the first one. Bo-Katan mentions, because Mando goes to visit her to see if he can enlist her help or advice or whatever.
Oh, her sitting in just the empty palace,
the hallway.
That's pretty great.
I don't care about anything anymore.
Yeah, I was like, look at my people. Oh, I'm sorry, there aren't any. Listen to this. Echo.
Yeah. 5 minutes of that. That would have been great. The extended version, the extended cut.
Bo-Katan. But anyway, yes.
So I had to go back and watch that episode because I wanted to.
You didn't have to.
Okay, it's true. But I wanted to refresh.
Sure, you know, you have agency and choice.
I wanted to refresh my memory on the dialogue there because I was like, well, what happened to the ships? Because I couldn't remember if she'd said something about that, and she does briefly because he asked her what happened to the stolen fleet. He says, oh, they're gone, wandering the galaxy as mercenaries.
Yeah.
So that's what's happened, is that all over the Mandalorians who are following her abandon her, I guess, on her
Well,
planet.
also Mandalore itself was destroyed. I think the whole point here is that, yeah, her faith has been rocked. She what's the point? She had this vision, and I do like the way they play her, and including in the animated series, of course, same actor, great. But I like the way they play her as being. She is both like she comes across as I am a genuine lover of my people who wants to bring them together, but there's also that hint of, well, is she kind of power hungry? And so therefore the kind of quasi spiritual thing, she would not have put that helmet on to go into the waters unless Mando was drowning, and and so she went in to save him. She was not on a quest, but she sees the mythosaur, which is of course one of the cheesiest names in all of Star Warsdom, showing where it was originated. I like the idea that the Mandalore is, beast is actually called the what if a thing.
Yeah, right. No one's ever seen me before, Saurus.
Yeah. Basically, it's a Mr. Snuffleupagus.
Right.
That'd be great. She dives in and there's this huge floating Muppet. Mr. Snuffleupagus, like, there it is. Which I guess if you did just like dissolve Mr. Snuffleupagus down, maybe the skull would look like that myth. Anyway, so but she sees that and she comes out, and so she is, and then of course our quasi head of the wandering tribe, the lady Smith. Does she have a name? I know they've given her a name.
Just the armorer. That's the only.
The armorer. That's all she's called.
Yeah.
And I will say again, good helmet acting. Because the thing is, we never see people's faces, and Pedro Pascal is mainly tasked with being like the badass hero who's occasionally worried about Grogu. But there's a lot of real delicate stuff that the armorer actress does, and I will say Katie Sackhoff, where you're like, wow, I don't even need to see their faces. I know exactly what they're doing, what they feel,
which is amazing.
Yeah, so her saying like, hey, if you don't take your helmet off, you're back in. You're in the fold, yo. And then the whole thing at the end of it, her going, take your helmet off, because you're going to be a symbol of bringing both worlds together. Oh, so that's the thrust. It's just they do have lots of little side avenues.
Yeah. And it's taken a while to get around. I kind of figured, I mean, I thought that would be the thing at the end of last season, too. So what's left?
They're like, we have to carve out a couple minutes for Tim Meadows to come in.
Yes.
But I loved him. I mean, I was totally on board with it because he wasn't like comedy character. It wasn't like Amy Sedaris where they're like, don't you get it? It's a comedy character.
Yeah. And we did see her briefly. We have seen her briefly this season.
I don't hate her character. It's just
she wasn't bad this time.
Yeah.
There weren't any Jawa sex jokes this time. Thank God.
Jawa sex jokes. Wasn't that your first album that you put out? Your solo album?
Yeah, it's out of print. No.
But where can they go from here? I think this continues to be, and Favreau's written, I think, almost all the episodes this season. Maybe all of them.
I think you're right.
He is the guy. And he is the guy. I mean, Filoni is his partner. But Jon Favreau, as a kid, never got over how awesome Boba Fett, the action figure, was. And so it's great. His focus was all on, I need more. I need to know their mythology. I need to know their culture. And so this show went from being Lone Wolf and Cub, the one Mandalorian walking around the great universe with this charge, his little baby pal. And then it was gradually like, oh, I ran into some other Mandalorians. And by now it's like, oh, this is them reuniting, and they are the baddest asses of the universe. And
this brings me to there are two clunky things about the season that bug me, but I'm okay with it. Obviously, I still really enjoy the show. I look forward to every episode. So
what is it?
Well, the first thing is, we've talked about this before, that I was really confused and bewildered and befuddled and somewhat annoyed by the way the Book of Boba Fett unfolded. I thought it started so strong.
Yeah.
Those first 2 episodes, especially the second one, especially was
The
just
whole Dancing with Wolves backstory.
It was great, and it was a continuation of what Favreau was doing and Filoni were doing really great with. Is delving deeper into characters who were more like set dressing in the original trilogy. Great set dressing, but the Jawas and the Sand People.
Yeah,
we got to go way deep into both of their cultures in the first 2 seasons of the show. Love that. But in Boba Fett, that's how Boba Fett started off. Is we go even deeper into Sand People, into the Tusken Raider culture, and then it just seemed like I don't know what happened to that show. But this is the thing that has left me a little bit disappointed now with word and about I just had the thing is that both of these things that are clunky to me, I've accepted I have to just deal with it because it's not going to change. One of them is that they brought back Grogu so quickly, and they did it in a completely different show.
That's true.
Not even in the Mandalorian show. So they've kind of awkwardly had to deal with this because not everybody watched Book of Boba Fett, so they may be confused and probably were confused at the beginning of this when Grogu was already back. So, and I accept the fact that he was probably going to come back anyway at some point. I can't help but think that this was an executive decision that was made maybe in committee or something. Like, look, we've got to get Grogu back, and he's got to be back in season 3. Figure it out. So they crammed him into Boba Fett. 2 really great episodes of The Mandalorian, by the way.
It's very true.
But
2 excellent Mandalorian episodes in
that should have happened at the beginning of the season, or at least in the middle of it or something. Because there's so many episodes now where Grogu is just set dressing. He's just there going, But
I will say
there's only 2 episodes this season so far where he's actually had something to do. There's the training, the paintball training scene.
Yes, yeah.
And where he rescues Mando by traveling back to Bo-Katan, which was cool. But so I'm a little bit annoyed by that, but I'm like, okay, this is the way it is. They're doing the best they can under the situation. We never know why they did it that way. But the other thing is, and this is just goes into what we're talking earlier about how they have to play into the events of the sequels, which we weren't. I don't think either of us were fond of the way that wrapped up.
Nope.
And many things in those
I don't have a blazing hatred, and there are scenes that I quite like, but it didn't work for me.
What annoys me is that they have to play into that now, and you can see them setting up the cloning thing and the first, the weakness of the New Republic, making way for the First Order to assert themselves later. That's what annoys me, is that there's so many things. Being us, you and I, being children of the original trilogy, which ended on such a high note. Everything's resolved. We're looking forward to this bright future, and now we know that all of it goes to shit.
Well, I'd say one of the main problems with Star Wars in general, the whole big saga, is that it should be fairy tale-esque, as in we're talking about eras, but when you make it a generational story where it's father to son to protege, essentially, we're dealing with 3 generations. So the Empire lasted about 20 years. An Empire lasting 20 years. That's like, okay. And I remember, like, in the first Star Wars and then Empire, when I started really thinking about all that story. The first movie, you can take, when you see it for the first time, you can take it as just a thing. And it's like, oh, you don't start building it on. We were there, obviously, when a sequel came around. We're like, what? There's more? Great. But then you start thinking about it. And to me, Empire, you start thinking about, oh, evil it's been dark for so long, and finally someone comes to bring the light. You're like going, well, they didn't have to wait that long. And then you're exactly right. The New Republic, that note of hope. And apparently that goes to shit after about 20, 25 years. And you're like, wow, man.
And all we've seen of it, like Carson Teva, really the only New Republic officer we've gotten to know in this new timeline, or this new story. He's really like the only one who has any kind of sense. Like everybody else, including Tim Meadows' character, it's just bureaucratic buffoonery. And they seem to be. I
think a little of that is necessary because it does fill it out, because it's like, great, you guys won. What do we do now? You're going to have infrastructure. You're going to have bureaucrats and politicians. So it can't just be Princess Leia going, everybody love each other. Good night, folks.
Yeah. And it does make sense that it would be the way it is, but it's just at the same time, it's like there's so much of the original trilogy is just like, well, we don't, we're moving on from that now. It's like, but there's, so much of it has been corrupted now. Like Luke's new Jedi Order destroyed. And then he dies on an island that he never leaves after he goes there.
Yeah.
The New Republic completely falls apart. Their home planet, three of their major planets, whatever it is, get destroyed. We never even get to see them.
That's not true. You see a bunch of people on a balcony.
Yeah.
Like going, hey, what's that? Oh, dead.
And then Palpatine, who was killed, in epic fashion at the end of Return of the Jedi. No, he comes back, no problem.
Well, that's comics. I mean, I know that this isn't a comic book, but it's very much like that. Just like Darth Maul got chopped in half, and then the animated series are like, look at him now. He's a spidery cyborg. He's back. Yeah. You're like, oh, okay.
And I know that this is not Jon Favreau's fault. It's not Dave Filoni's fault. Not even George Lucas's fault. He had nothing to do with these decisions.
Something they probably should have done, and I will say this, is maybe, like, did you ever read Star Wars Legacy from Dark Horse Comics?
No.
This is pre the sequels. Dark Horse had the comics license for Star Wars for a long time, like 20 plus years.
I do have some of those comics, yeah.
And Star Wars Legacy was set decades after the classic middle trilogy. So it didn't have it. Rey didn't exist. There was none of that in a thought. And it was a Skywalker. He was a descendant, but he's a lot more like Han Solo. He's clearly got Jedi potential, but he doesn't give a shit about that. And he's kind of a rogue and all this stuff. And it was free of all that stuff. And the whole idea of it was him becoming more of a hero over time. I do think that it was a mistake with the sequel trilogy to make it the next generation. I think they should have let our classic heroes be spoken of as legendary and move past. Like, they're already dead. Maybe Luke does show up as a Force ghost at some point to whoever is the new, hero. But I think you're right.
Go even further into the future.
Yeah, let the New Republic have been a success, and maybe it starts to decline. I always say the same thing about Starfleet. I think Starfleet, if you move in the future, you get to show it start to decline, and then people are taking advantage of that. Or maybe it spread itself so thin, like ancient Rome, that the outskirts of it are incredibly corrupt. That kind of thing. I'm like, yeah, do something like that where I agree. I would love if Han and Luke and Leia's big heroic thing brought about generations of peace instead of like, well, you got a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Hope you enjoyed it, everybody.
Yeah.
And that way you also could have not burdened the classic cast, which of course, as nerds, am I excited to see old Han with Chewie show up on the Falcon? Yeah. But I think putting so much weight on that nostalgia was a mistake. It ought to be like, they were great, and they're in a hall of heroes, and there they are. They were great, and I live by their example, or whatever. And have Luke do a token, I am a ghost, or Leia, Force ghost. How you doing?
Yeah.
Give Carrie a little bit of money, and she does a little appearance, but not have her character go out and die, and not have Han get killed by his son, and all that stuff. Which I got to say, that's good storytelling, if nothing else, because it's grim. It has a huge impact.
Right.
But anyway,
yeah,
that is something that Filoni and Favreau have to deal with. Is that no matter how much cool stuff they do, we know that whatever Mando and Bo-Katan get up to will have no impact on the next part of the saga.
And every time that we see the New Republic in this series, it kind of reminds me of that. It's like, do we have to be reminded of this? I want to see this story and not have to think about all this other shit that this is leading to.
Yeah.
But can I do it? Unless they're actually going to be brave enough to retcon, which there was some hope that they might do that with Mandalorian.
There was some talk about just scrapping
Mhm.
which that sounds horrible because of all the work that went into it. But just saying, nope, that was a possible future, but here's the real one.
Right.
And thank you for playing, Daisy Ridley and, John Boyega. And thank you, everybody, for showing up. But we're moving on, and you guys didn't even exist.
And they could still do that, but they won't.
They could do time travel, which is the cheesiest thing ever. And Star Wars has never done time travel. I mean, outside of probably the animated stuff.
Right. We were talking about, which is canon. The Rebels, it happened on the Rebels series. That there was a big theory that could
Dude, weren't you
be the
excited to
mechanic
see
that would make this possible.
Zeb in live? Dude, that was pretty great.
And I'm absolutely positive we're going to see him again. If
he's going to be in Ahsoka. Apparently, a lot
definitely
of
that.
I mean, apparently, you're going to have a lot of those characters in Ahsoka as human, like live action. Cool.
Well, obviously he's going to be on the Ahsoka show for sure, but I would not be surprised if we see him again on this season of The Mandalorian too.
That would be neat.
They clearly put a lot of work into him. He looked so good.
He looked so good. It was just like, well, that's how you translate into like.
Yeah.
And I thought the same thing when they brought in. Oh, why am I blanking? Season 2, they brought in the bounty hunter guy, like the Western looking dude with the big hat.
Oh yeah,
I can't remember his name.
The Clint Eastwood guy.
Yeah.
Damn it.
With the same voice actor, but yeah, he looked exactly like the cartoon. They're like, nope, and there he is, and I'm like, oh. And I got no problem with Rosario Dawson.
Sorry. Yeah.
Cad Bane, thank you. And I have no problem with Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka.
Oh no,
I have no problem.
She's fantastic.
I have no problem.
So yeah.
So yeah.
What else is there to say? Oh, that was my theory. What I was leading to earlier. My current theory is that the Mandalorians who split off from Bo-Katan, they are the ones who freed Moff Gideon. For what purpose, we don't know. You would think that they would want to get him so they could exact their own revenge on him because of what he did to Mandalore.
Yeah.
Right? So he could be in their custody. But it's also possible maybe those Mandalorians.
Group. I mean, they're basically talking about all. So I can't see that, but a pocket, a couple, maybe
whoever. But yeah, I think it's possible that maybe they're acting alone, and for some reason, either they're working with Moff Gideon, or they're holding him for their own purposes, or they're actually working with Thrawn. Like Thrawn has as mercenaries has hired them to go get Moff Gideon.
I'd say it's a little late in the season to suddenly make Thrawn a big bad, but if they do, I'm not going to be upset about it.
Yeah.
I will say this. I'm enjoying it. I texted Jerry because, of course, we watch the episodes and go, what'd you think? A good impression. And I was like, Andor was amazing. Andor had depth and grit, and it had gray shades and very well realized. And I was like going, and then the Mandalorian gives me all the pew pew. And I got no problem with that. It is similar to the Marvel thing. I'm like, I think there's room in the Star Wars galaxy for all kinds of stories. And I love Andor. It is a real great achievement all the way around. And then I watch The Mandalorian, like the most recent episode, and I'm just like giddy. I think it's a little easy the way they brought down that pirate ship. And I was like, why did he call everybody when all it really took was a couple of his pals? Like, yeah, just bring in that one Bo-Katan ship and bring in your fighter, and you take down the whole thing.
Yeah,
but it was still awesome. You got dogfights, you got the really cool pirate ship, and I love the design of the pirate. Cartoony as fuck, but that's a Star Wars thing. I'm like, yeah.
I was kind of glad when those characters got killed because the pirates were kind of annoying to me. The whole idea of pirates in Star Wars is an old EU thing. That's the extended universe thing. But I don't remember them being portrayed as our pirates before, and that was bugging the hell out of me, especially that first episode with that one character, Vane, I think he's called, the Nikto guy.
Yeah,
he chases after he gets chased away by Grief and Mando in the Devarro capital city. He tries to attack him in his ship after that. And he says, "Avast, Mandalorian."
He did say that.
No.
And when he did that, they also played like a little pipe tune. And then I thought the parrot on his shoulder was a bit distracting.
It just went a little bit too far in the cartoony direction, but they're dead now, so it's okay.
But they're dead now. I have fun with these episodes, and I'm actually kind of enjoying the fact that this season, it does have some weight to it, but at the same time it feels adventure based, and I'm kind of just enjoying that. Mm-hmm. I do agree they need to think of something new for Grogu, because the mystery of Grogu is kind of gone.
Right.
And that was what we were following for a long time.
I really don't think he was supposed to be in the season originally, at least not to this extent.
Probably not.
I think maybe the original idea was that we keep cutting back to him with Luke, every other episode or something.
Except for basically they had to come out and say, guys, he was gone for years. It's like, just because this is season 3 doesn't mean time didn't pass. Right. It's like, yeah, you guys didn't wait around that long, but he was with Luke for a good long while.
Yeah, this reminds me of one thing. Another thing a little detail that bugged me about the way he came back in Book of Boba Fett. When I like the scene, the decision that Luke lays before him is like, look, I'm going to try to avoid what happened to him with my dad. What do you want?
Yeah, what do you want? I'm not forcing
him to choose.
Anything.
But he told Mando when he took Grogu at the end of season 2, I will protect this child's life with my life. I will. So when Grogu makes his decision, is like, I want to go back to my dad. He sends him. He doesn't even take him back personally. He puts him on.
Yeah,
he puts him in his X-wing and has R2 take him back.
Yeah, he's like,
seemed like it really. And I know why they did that.
Hey, Grogu, right? I got no time for you.
Yeah, and I know that
I've got all these other students, and he points over. There's an empty field. I have all these other students. No, he had one student.
Clearly, I know why they did that, because they'd already spent all this money putting him into those scenes that they made, which seems like they went way further than they needed to with those scenes. That second episode,
man, but I appreciate the effort.
It looked, God, it was wonderful. I was just standing there watching that episode. I was just slack-jawed the whole time.
Sitting there next to each other, and I'm like, wow, one's a puppet. Well, actually, that probably wasn't even a puppet. 2 CGI people just sitting there having a convo. Great.
But also, if Luke had brought him back in the midst, of that battle on Tatooine,
that would have been a very cool.
It would have been great, but that would have been more money than I guess they were willing to spend in that battle. So instead, they had to
save money to come up with those cool candy-colored street bikes.
So yeah, but they kind of made Luke look a little bit like a dick. I mean, R2, I guess he trusted R2, but
you can always trust R2 because he is the most important droid in the entire history of the universe. But
R2's not a superhero, something's still going to happen.
Take that back. Take that back. Jesus, I'm not going to hit you dump on R2.
There are ways to reason around it. You could say that he saw through the Force, that he would be okay, or I don't know.
And no one's following at this point. You're free to go back and forth in an X-wing all day long. No one cares.
What are you talking about? Just the show?
At that point in the storyline, it's like, who was going to be tracking that X-wing? Nobody. He was safe. Grogu was safe.
Yeah.
Also, he had his little chainmail shirt.
Yeah. So, what's the worst that could happen?
What's the worst that could happen? And now he's got a Beskar, I don't know, frontis piece thing.
That looks like it's too heavy for him to carry. Yeah. And I love the way they portray it.
He just tips over. Boom.
Like how does I remember? It's not really clear what he's thinking in a lot of these scenes. It's just like,
if he spent 2 years with Luke just being an adorable baby Yoda, I'm like, what kind of I mean, he seems to understand pretty much everything. But I mean, I'm sure Luke was like going, you just going to go gaga? Is that basically it? I'm just going to hang out with you while you go, goo. Perfect.
Right. Yeah.
Stop eating frogs. Can we get back to the Jedi shit?
So I hope that they have more stuff for him to do later this season, because I did like the episode where he has to take charge and race through the cave to rescue Mando. Was cool, and I want to see more of that, of him taking the initiative. But obviously,
you're not going to be happy till he gets his own lightsaber.
No, I don't really care about that.
Oh, are you kidding me?
I mean, well, he did have one briefly, right? He had one. He had a little one, right? He had a little training saber, didn't he? Or maybe,
Did
or
he?
just. Oh no, that's right. He rejected it. He was offered one.
Oh, yeah.
Luke offered him. Here's a really cool lightsaber.
Man, I need to go back and rewatch. All I'm
Yeah.
saying is, and we can wrap it up on that. Season 3, awesome. I know you've got your nitpicks, but you're enjoying it. Come on.
I wouldn't use that word, but
You wouldn't
yeah,
use
I am.
awesome.
I'm very much enjoying it.
Man,
I think it
You're
could
just
be
so
awesome.
cynical. You're so cynical. And Katie Sackhoff, Bo-Katan, all
Yeah.
day long.
That is probably my favorite thing about the show right now is what's happening with her character.
Yeah, it's great. And I like that Favreau's like, can I still be chunky Mandalorian who's got a problem with everything? Yes, you can. Because, A, you wrote the episode. I would do totally the same thing. I'd be writing myself in as like, not the lead, but I'm going to be able to wear my own suit of armor. I'm going to get to be a Mandalorian. And yeah, he's an important character at this point.
I thought it was kind of funny too that at the end of that last episode when they defeat the pirates and Mando presents the idea as like, hey, look, we could go live in Navarro. And like nobody gives them any resistance really because they're like, yeah, this place sucks.
I got to be
Basically
honest, I'm a little tired of the cave.
Yeah, I was meant to make a joke about that earlier that they've really fallen on hard times. They're holed up in a cave in the land of the lost.
One thing, Marshall, Will, and Holly, and a whole shitload of Mandalorians. I liked this was funny, and this was just budgetary. This most recent episode, that capital city gets, the pirates come in, and that was pretty drastic. They're blowing people up and stuff. And you've got Krieg going like, come with me, people of the capital city, whatever it's called. And I'm like, so 30 people? 30 people?
Yeah, that's right.
It's like
that was,
you're a big president of 30 people.
That was, I think that scene was a clear sign that they just didn't have the money or the budget to
it's like,
duplicate.
I know
They could have used CGI to make that crowd bigger,
they
like Moses leading his people through the desert or something.
Like,
but
come on, you're all the survivors. No one was even crying. I'm like, I think about all of them have at least 2 or 3 relatives who just got blown up. And everyone's just like, yay, Krieg.
We're with you. Somebody like being back in, this is something that I don't think happens anymore. People calling in fake bomb threats to school, and then you'd be
sadly,
to stand outside for an hour while the cops came. That's what it was like.
Actually,
they're just mildly put out.
Except for my high school graduating class was 3 times as big as what was hanging out with Krieg. I'm like, oh, come on, man. But I still,
they're all just kind of going. Really?
I still love Carl Weathers being a vital part of it, and his characters had a good arc.
And he directed that. Well, I forget which episode it was.
He did the one before.
Yeah, which was good.
It was great.
Yeah.
Again, I'm really enjoying it mainly because it's not as heavy as Andor, and that may just be my frame of mind. I'm like, dogfights, yeah. And both episodes, the one that Carl Weathers did, and then this one. Most recent one, I was like going, oh, I forgot how much I missed just the roar of those fucking ships and going pew pew. It's good stuff.
It is, and I just wish that. I hope maybe from here forward, there's talk now. I hate to blame Kathleen Kennedy here because we don't know what's going on in the board meetings around the show.
This is not jump on JJ,
but I do know. But I really do have a sense that Book of Boba Fett and this season of Mandalorian were made a little bit messy because of meddling of executive decisions that were foisted upon them. And I just want to say, leave Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni alone. Let them do their work.
Much.
Leave them alone. So
I will say
please.
That even if you took that intrusive storyline, which of course I loved, but if you took the Mandalorian and Grogu and Ahsoka and Luke stuff out of Book of Boba Fett, you still had story problems. The problem, a lot of it had to do with what we thought we were going to get.
It seemed very rushed after that point. It's like it was great up until the Mandalorian, and then it was like,
in my mind, what they set up, and you had that great tease of him sitting on the throne in Jabba's palace. I've said this before. The thing is, you're thinking this is going to be a badass like mob story. And it turns into, I mean, a pet rancor and all. I mean, there were things I certainly did like, and that one badass Wookiee dude. There's all kinds of stuff that was good
that they didn't do enough with.
That they didn't do enough with, but I also wanted it to be darker. I'm sorry, Mr. Rodriguez, who I really do enjoy a lot of his stuff, but the tone wasn't what I thought we were going to have.
Totally off, yeah.
And I wanted Boba Fett to, sure, he's leaning now towards, he's redeeming himself, becoming kind of a hero and leader, sort of. But I didn't want it to be this complete sort of turnaround of like, I learned some stuff from the Sand People, and boy, I sure hope they like me. I sure hope the people of Mos Eisley think I'm okay. I'm like, no, I want you to come in and crush the, you know, whatever the, what are they named? The Black Suns. I'm trying to remember all the names of like criminal organizations in the Star Wars universe.
The Pike. People,
yeah, I mean, I wanted it to be sort of like that stuff where it was going to be, I don't want necessarily ultra violence. I just didn't want it to be as candy colored and cute. I was like, no, don't give me that with my Boba Fett. Save that for Mando, save that for the animated series, but have Boba Fett being like, you fucked with the wrong guy.
Two things I think it would have made that story a lot better, and I was really surprised they didn't do this because there was even lines. There were lines of dialogue that seemed to hint at this. Like he mentions that double. He refers to Bib Fortuna as double crossing bastard or whatever.
Yeah.
What did he do? We don't know. I could think of a lot of things he did because I thought it would have been really cool if we found out that it was Bib like spiked Boba's drink or something when they were on Jabba's
on his whatever they called it,
barge, the sail barge. That maybe that was why Boba wound up bumbling falling into the.
I'm in a Sarlacc pit.
Because we don't even see how Bib got off the barge. They didn't even show that. I thought for sure they would show a little flashback to that scene to see how he got out of there.
I don't think
obviously he did because he was there.
Yeah, and it blew the hell up. But maybe he just went. I mean, but they were only 15 feet over the sand. I'm just like, woo!
If they weren't obligated to cram the Mandalorian into that season, they could have. This would be really cool if they did some flashbacks back to the events of Return of the Jedi, so you can see exactly what the beef was that Boba had with Bib, why he set up the fact that he wanted to go back and take over Jabba's throne. That would have been really neat. But just have maybe one flashback episode to the events of that day, and then go forward.
That wouldn't have been expensive.
No, yeah.
I want to go back to Jedi and see some crazy stuff. Jedi had problems. The thing with all these, like the third chapters, I'm like, well, I'll still take it. But there are plenty of things I change about Return of the Jedi, including Ewoks.
Gosh. Yeah.
I mean, if the Ewoks were necessary, keep them around, but I would really downplay them. They spent too much time with those toys. They're just like going, hey, kids, don't you want your own? And I'm sitting there in the theater going, no.
Yeah, I know.
Just like we had Phantom Menace going, hey, guys, don't you love Jar Jar? No. Less screen time, please.
Which was, I mean, that was kind of cool that Ahmed Best got to come back and actually be the guy who rescues. Yeah,
that was awesome. Simply because even if you didn't know who that was, he's a cool character for like 5 minutes. You're like, damn, that Jedi, what a cool dude. Then when you find out, if you didn't already know who that is, you're like, oh, that's a present.
Yeah.
It's like,
to him and to us.
Yeah, his interview, they interviewed him. He's like going, I seriously debated it because he goes, I still love Star Wars, but it's a complicated relationship I have with it. And I was sitting there going like, can I handle it if they don't like this character?
Yeah. People are still speculating that Jar Jar may appear because he escapes Coruscant in a Nubian Naboo ship.
Yeah.
So
you know what? I'll be okay if he doesn't.
I'll be okay if he does. You know, like I don't really. I'm not afraid of Jar Jar anymore.
I'm not afraid of him, and they certainly did all they could, especially also in the animated series, of saying like, look, he became a senator. Is he still kind of an idiot? Yeah, but his heart's in the right place, and he's learning the ropes. Okay, characters can grow, as long as he's not still getting his fucking tongue stuck in, whatever fucking
Yeah.
turbines of something and going, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
George, why didn't you have people around you to read that script and go, hey, can we talk about a character that I don't think works at all?
One little thing about the Ewoks, and then we can put a bow on this episode. Back when
one little thing about the Ewoks, and then we can go on to real life.
Yeah. All right. Back when Star Wars Galaxies was still a thing, which was the multiplayer game that preceded the Old Republic one.
Yeah.
Which I never played the Old Republic.
And you could wander from planet to planet.
Yeah, and Star Wars Galaxies was actually a very ambitious multiplayer game. Dwight and I used to play it, and we were actually in there in beta. It was funny because Dwight was working as a video game reviewer at the time for the Houston Chronicle, and he was trying to get into beta, and I got in before he did. So he got in because I think they gave me one or two invites. So in beta, we played the beta for about 2 months, I think, before it launched, and those are still my favorite memories of playing Star Wars Galaxies. Was in beta when like shit wasn't working, and it was like a really tight community of people. But one of the funnest things that happened during that period was when they rolled out Endor as a playable planet, and so everybody went to Endor the night that they put it up from the test servers for the first time, and you land in this little. It's like an small imperial base that you land in, and then you can go and venture out and explore the planet, which everybody was really excited to do. But people were nervous to go out on their own. So I got there and joined this party. Like there was one, I remember it was a Zabrak character, the race that Darth Maul is. He was organizing this huge party of 20 people, and he leads us out. We go and start exploring the frontier of Endor. Then we run into like one Ewok. And this one little Ewok laid waste to our entire party of 20 people. Just went around like a little demon, picking us off one at a time. And this was going on all over.
And all singing yep at the same time.
All the servers that were doing the test run of Endor had the same thing happen because I think it was like
massively overpowered them.
They deliberately overpowered the Ewoks as a joke, I think. I don't know if I ever found this to be true, but I'm sure the devs were just watching this happen and going, oh, just laughing. And it was hilarious. I was laughing watching it happen. I was like, oh my God. I wish I had taken screenshots of this, but it was.
That was your Leroy Jenkins moment. Only it had nothing to do with your own party's foolhardiness. It had to do with evil devs. Oh, evil devs.
It was so great. But anyway.
I assume eventually they powered them down.
Yeah, they did. But they were still like, you had to be careful with those little buggers. And they were pretty powerful. Why weren't they just
your friends? You didn't just run into them. They're like, "Hi, how you doing?"
Well, they were like,
they loved Leia right off the bat. They liked playing with her helmet, and it was adorable. She was hugging those little things.
Were in the game anyway. Even after they powered them down and made them a little bit more reasonable, they were aggressive. Yeah.
Well, this has been Star Wars Galaxy's Memories with Chad. And on that note, next week, what should we talk about?
Well, Hello Tomorrow is wrapping up this week.
Yeah, that's right.
So we could talk about that. And I guess
we'll figure something out.
Oh, I had a theory about Jet Crusher.
Oh,
getting back to PICARD, which we'll get back to this later for sure.
I think we're probably going to skip the episode this week.
You're just over it.
PICARD's all right.
I have a theory. They stole Picard's body.
Mm-hmm.
What if the villain is actually a resurrected Jean-Luc Picard as Locutus? Like, that he's the big bad.
Oh, except for there's been no mention of Borg being involved in this at all. It's all changeling,
right? But they were setting it up when Shaw. That was the big beef that Shaw has with.
I think this is backstory. But it's a fun fan theory. And we don't know.
No.
Even the cast doesn't know. They were blindfolded and they were hypnotized after they finished filming. They're not sure what they filmed.
But it's kind of surprising because a lot of people have seen this entire season, and there's been very little leaks that I've heard.
Who's seen the entire season besides
Robert
production?
Meyer saw the entire season.
Oh man, usually like with press and stuff like that, they're like, "Here's the first 4 or something."
Right. Yeah. For some reason, they must have written a really, really tight NDA for these people.
Damn. Yeah. Well, I'm good. I mean, I'm glad there are no leaks. I prefer not to have spoilers.
But how poetic would that be, though, to have the villain be, because he's something
Picard
that has
versus
completely
Picard?
scarred him. Like, yeah, that he gets to defeat, sort of reconcile that part of his past that he feels ashamed of.
It'd be cool
to actually defeat Locutus one-on-one.
It'd be cool.
And it would be a big moment for Shaw himself, because his life was, he's sort of traumatized by what happened during the events of that season. So, and that would kind of make sense. It would almost like a Darth Vader father thing.
End up, though, this does sound to me like it'll end up being fan fiction that you write for yourself.
We'll see.
Says a guy who can't judge, because I'm sitting there going, what if this guy met this guy and they went, woo, woo, woo?
I was thinking about that.
Too much of my time doing that.
That last episode that came out last week, where it was revealed that Jack has these telepathic powers.
Mm-hmm.
But it made me wonder, is like, does he have like Borgie things in his DNA because of what happened to his dad?
Things.
Where he can sort of create like just spontaneous collective connections with other human beings.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think those are finer crumbs that, I mean, there's plenty to speculate on, but I think those are more highly speculative than what they're kind of aiming at. This, I think, will end up being an Occam's razor thing, where it's like, we can go into crazy, like, what if blah, 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 and they're like going, no, they just fight that changeling lady and then everybody's happy. The end. Sorry, guys. I know you thought at some point Kirk was going to walk in and go, I've got this from here.
Yes.
It's like, because every fan's got something they would kill to have happen on a show like this. So like, wouldn't it be great if the Gord captain from the arena shows up and he's like, and they're like, absolutely, you now are the captain of the Titan. And he's like, cool. And he's like a lizard. I love the Gorn, and I'm all about having more Gorn. But that's the thing, is like, we all have things we'd like to see happen. We can only wait, Chad, and we only have to wait a couple of days.
Yeah. I wish it was tonight, though, because I would like to know.
I know you do. I know,
because I think we are going to find out who Jack is. I think we're going to find out what the story is.
Because we are in the second chunk. The second chunk. We gotta wrap some stuff up.
Literally, where that last episode ended was like, and you are,
and you credits. Are, who are you?
Yeah,
I can't wait. So we're still nerds, apparently. Turns out, after this is our 21st episode, Chad. We did not celebrate our 20 last week. It's the 21st, and I all I can say is we are still nerds.
Yeah.
Okay. And on that note, I'm going to eat lunch now.
I think that sounds like a wonderful idea.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Write us letters.
Bye.